think there's a button, how little they know the global complexity.
Hello and welcome to JGA's Payroll Power Hour, part of National Payroll Week. I'm Tom, Director for JGA Recruitment, and I'm delighted to kickstart our Payroll Power Hour, featuring some of the brightest minds in payroll. Over the next hour, we'll hear from leading experts who will share their insights on the challenges and opportunities that are shaping payroll today. We'll cover topics including AI, payroll technology, global compliance, the future of payroll, and more. JGA are proud to support the payroll profession every day by connecting outstanding payroll talent with forward-thinking organisations. We'll hear from some of the experts who have made a real impact throughout their careers today. Thank you for joining us. Let's get to it. First up, I'm delighted to introduce JGA's own Freddie Morehouse, who will be discussing how to attract and retain top payroll talent.
Happy National Payroll Week, everyone. I'm Freddie from JGA Recruitment Group, and today I want to talk to you about something every business is thinking about right now: how to attract and keep the very best payroll talent. Payroll is the one function that touches every single employee, every single month, without fail, yet finding and holding on to great payroll professionals is harder than ever. So how do we change that? At JGA, we help organisations every day by connecting them with payroll professionals who make an instant impact. And from our experience, success comes down to two things: attraction and retention. Payroll professionals are in demand and they have options. So how do you stand out as an employer of choice? First of all, you elevate payroll's profile. Too often, it's seen as purely transactional. We need to position payroll as strategic, at the heart of compliance, employee experience, and financial well-being. That shift makes the role much more appealing. Offer more than just salary. Yes, of course, pay matters, but flexible working, learning opportunities, and clear career paths show candidates value their future. Streamline hiring. Long, drawn-out processes lose great people. Speed, communication, and respect make all the difference. And finally, rethink your job adverts. They're not just descriptions, they're sales tools. Recruitment is a two-way street. Your advert should excite candidates about joining you. Later today, my colleague Alexandra will be joining the Payroll Support Network to share exactly how to write job ads that work. So don't miss that session. And here's why partnering with JGA makes a difference. We know the payroll market inside out. We can help craft job ads that resonate, advise on competitive packages, and connect you with talent you'd struggle to find on your own. Attracting talent is only half the challenge. Keeping them is where most businesses stumble. Payroll turnover is often driven by two things: lack of recognition and lack of progression. So what works? Invest in development, training, conferences, new tech skills. Show your payroll team you're committed to their growth. Give them a voice. Payroll leaders deserve a seat at the table. Involving them in decisions on system compliance and well-being not only keeps them engaged, it improves outcomes. Recognize their impact. Celebrate accuracy, celebrate resilience, celebrate problem solving. Payroll might be behind the scenes, but recognition should be front and center. Culture is just as important. Payroll thrives where collaboration, respect, and trust are lived daily. Retention isn't just about pay rises, it's about whether people feel valued, supported, and able to see a future with you. And again, this is where JGA helps. We don't just place candidates, we build long-term partnerships. We advise on retention strategies, share market insights, and help you create environments where your payroll talent thrives. Attracting and retaining payroll talent isn't just about quick fixes. And with JGA as your partner, you won't just hire the best payroll professionals, you'll keep them, develop them, and build a payroll function people aspire to join. Thanks for watching and happy National Payroll Week.
Okay, payroll. So for many organisations, it's still seen as a back office function. something that just needs to run on time, quietly and in the background. But we all know that payroll should actually be part of the strategic conversation. It isn't just about paying people accurately and on time every time, although that is still very much business critical. Payroll is one of the richest sources of data in any organisation. It holds the complete picture of workforce costs, compliance, and the lived employee experience. Think about it. Every hiring decision, every overtime shift, every benefit or reward, it all runs through payroll, the costs and the outcomes, which means that payroll leaders are sitting on insights that can shape their organisation strategy. Payroll data can show you a true view of the total workforce costs. That's vital for budgeting, it's vital for forecasting, and it's vital for resource planning, which is all important to an organisation. It can show you compliance intelligence, spotting risks before they become fines or reputational issues, such as national minimum wage compliance here in the UK. Payroll data can also show you employee behavioural patterns, things like absence reporting and if there's any trends, overtime, or the take-up of benefits. Forget, does payroll sit within HR or finance? When payroll data is connected to HR and finance, suddenly you've got a really powerful tool for decision making. Leaders can see the real impact of pay and reward strategies, assess productivity against costs, and make better choices that directly influence the bottom line. And payroll isn't just about the business performance, it's also central to the employee experience. With technology and self-service tools, payroll can empower employees, giving them transparency, control, and confidence over their pay. Initiatives like earned wage access, which are simple but gives employees the power and the freedom to access their earned wages when they need it and draw down against their earned salaries. That really empowers people and that improves their financial well-being and performance. And it helps them feel valued and supported, which overall improves trust, engagement, and ultimately retention. Let's face it, negative payroll experiences are remembered far more than the positive ones, but it's the positive ones that make people stay. So let's improve that experience for our employees. And beyond the payslip, payroll is also the engine room, the driving force for meaningful reward strategies. Whether it's flexible benefits, bonuses, or recognition schemes, payroll ensures that these are delivered fairly, accurately, and visibly within organisations. When done well, payroll doesn't just process the rewards, it helps bring reward to life, turning strategy into a tangible part of the employee experience. So payroll deserves that voice at the strategic table. It deserves that voice because it holds the insights that drive financial performance. It underpins compliance and risk management, and it's central to shaping the overall employee experience. When payroll is part of the conversation, businesses make smarter decisions and people feel more valued. So the bottom line benefits. Happy National Payroll Week.
I'm helping out on the National Payroll Week and the Payroll Power Hour. It's good to be with you. Subject of today is the impending 1st of April 2026 requirement for payroll service registration that is proposed in the finance bill. So we'll go through some of the areas of what that means for us as payroll professionals, service providers, etc. Important that we follow this and potentially prepare and see where this goes. Following a number of tax advice market consultations, HMRC and the Treasury are progressing improvements in the tax advice market. And we think, what the thump has that got to do with us in payroll? We don't give tax advice, we just pay people and send files and reports. Well, as part of that process and the draft bill, they have required a tax advisor registration from 1st of April 2026, and confirmed that payroll service is going to be considered tax advice, but not payroll software. So those who give tax advice must already be regulated for anti-money laundering, either through a professional body, something like the FCA, or through HMRC Economic Crimes Unit. Payroll services, on general principle, if they don't give any tax advice, didn't have to be, they were exempt. But the new law defines tax advice to apply to any person who acts as an agent in relation to tax and who interacts with HM, Revenue and Customs. So it will apply to HMRC interactions by phone, email, post, sending messages electronically or on the web or on portals, filing returns, claims, notices, or anything with HMRC, whether actual real advice is involved or not. So the tax advice definition has been expanded to capture payroll services. This also has an implication for worldwide payroll service provision, because the requirement for agents to register applies worldwide to those who are servicing the UK payroll marketplace. So to register, they require names and addresses of the advisor, the details of their senior manager, and appropriate evidence to support that application. The advisor cannot have any outstanding tax matters or other disqualification reason in place. So even though they may be a brilliant expert, they're playing a little bit with their own tax affairs, they all have to be tip-top in order to act as a tax advisor and potentially operate payroll for others. The advisor is required to be registered with a supervisory body for the purposes of anti-money laundering. And that's where things start to play interesting, because at the moment there is no payroll services body that regulates for anti-money laundering. So at the moment, a number of payroll providers that are out there will already have gone through this with the Economics Crime Unit of HMRC by registering for AML. Personally, I'm registered which enables me to give tax advice, very detailed advice in relation to payroll matters. So that requirement will extend. However, that registration at the moment tends to relate to businesses and locations, not individuals. So there is a question mark of what does it mean when it's talking about a person, when lots of us work for firms and we have lots of people working for us, helping and assistance. What does this new legislation mean for us? Some of that is not overly clear at the moment and will need to be developed and found and investigated and significantly prepared for April 26, because if this law goes through, and the implication is that it's been announced that it will in this form or a slightly revised form, payroll service providers will need to be readied. The other area that comes to mind on what are payroll providers is because the requirement does not apply to in-house personnel. So if you're doing payroll for your own company, this new requirement doesn't apply to you. However, some in-house payrolls do payrolls for their neighbours or associated companies, or maybe a subsidiary or a franchise or a business, just as a favour because we've got the systems to do it. In that case, if you're acting on their behalf with HMRC, you've become a payroll service provider, and therefore you probably fall under this regulation. So look at this very importantly as a critical matter in preparation for April 2026 to see if agent tax advice registration requirements apply to me as a payroll service business and as a person. And is it people that need to be registered? And how am I going to be covered by the requirement to be regulated for anti-money laundering? Anyway, that's a brief snippet on the changes that are coming downstream with registration requirements for tax advisors, how they affect payroll service companies, applicable from April 2026 with a 3-month transition period. What are we going to do? So it's time to start looking at this, start interacting, getting our house in order, looking at our economic crime unit registrations if we need it, or other professional body if we can affiliate with them, to see how we can continue offering and paying the UK PLC employees.
I am really excited to be part of these National Payroll Week celebrations, and I'm talking about a subject that is really close to my own heart, and that is that payroll is not just numbers, it is a network as well. And these networks exist regardless of how long you've been in payroll, what your role is within the industry, what systems you use, what sector you're in. They are just a brilliant resource of shared experience, of knowledge, of ideas, of entertainment, of camaraderie. And I can't know everything. I am not a payroll expert. I have done payroll for a long time. I won't tell you quite how long, but I can't retain and learn everything that there is to know about payroll. But I've got such a wonderful network and a wonderful community that I have connected with through various ways, actually, through LinkedIn, through introductions from other payroll professionals, through recruitment agencies, through sector-specific and software-specific user groups. And you just have to be yourself. You can come as you are, and people will be welcoming. They will absolutely recognise the challenges that you face. They will be able to bring ideas to the table. And there is nothing better than being able to talk to someone who understands the challenges that you're facing at that time, the emotional pain that can exist in payroll sometimes. It's emotionally charged. We know that. Pay is so important. Sometimes just to have a challenge and say to someone, how could you do this? How would you do this? And sometimes people will give you ideas of things you would never have considered. And it's simply amazing. And I don't believe that you can get that kind of intuition, that insight, and that knowledge anywhere else. And since I created a support network, I have been absolutely overwhelmed by the people in payroll that are willing to come to the table, no money changing hands, absolutely just to share their knowledge and their expertise on subjects. And I have learnt more, I would say, in the last year than I probably have in the last 5 to 10 years, because I was in my own role, in my sector, and I didn't need to look outside it. But my knowledge, my horizons, my opportunities have expanded so much through being part of a really active network that is looking to really just connect people with those challenges and actually just make people laugh, because sometimes that's really all we need. We just need to know that we've got people on our side, people that care, people that we can have a moan to, but also celebrate with us. As payrollers, we don't do enough to shout about our own successes, to share our good ideas, to celebrate our wins. And if we don't have the confidence to do that ourselves, what we need are the people around us that can do that for us. And that is what I've seen the most, and that is what I'm really proud of. So this National Payroll Week, do reach out. Find people on LinkedIn that perhaps share your system or your job title. Find a community. It doesn't have to be the payroll support network. It can be a software user group. You might find that there is a networking event, an in-person one near you. Even if you don't know anybody else, just go, just say hello to somebody, just give them a smile, ask them how their job is, how long they've been in payroll. It's an easy opener, and everyone is so receptive. You will build that network one person at a time, and you will learn so much from it. So please, this National Payroll Week, reach out, have fun, and thank you so much.
There's a lot of noise out there right now about AI, and in payroll in particular, I hear the same fear and fear over again from people, and that is it's going to take our jobs. But let me stop everybody there for a moment. AI is not some job-eating machine sent from the future, and payroll jobs aren't disappearing like everybody seems to think. They're actually evolving. The profession has been automating payroll for decades, and each time something new came along, the go-to response was always payroll jobs will vanish. Instead, and each time, payroll teams became more valuable because they got to finally do the good stuff. What AI is doing today is taking away the parts of payroll everybody hates doing, the boring and the repetitive. And let's be honest, if AI can automate those things faster and more accurately, that has to be a win, not a threat. AI can reduce the reactiveness of payroll. It can spot issues before they hit the payslip. It can flag compliance risks in real time. It can reconcile data across platforms and geographies so that payroll teams don't have to spend their evenings and weekends chasing ghosts in spreadsheets. And when those fires are finally put out, the payroll teams can do what they've always wanted to do and haven't always been able to, and that is add value. So the next time the conversation rears its head, think of it like this. Think about the hours payroll teams lose chasing down late timesheets, fixing typos and reconciling mismatched data around the business. That's not strategic payroll. That's a slow death by admin. Payroll sits on a literal treasure chest of workforce data, be that trends in labour costs, overtime spikes, patterns of absence and compliance risks. With AI doing the heavy lifting in the background, payroll professionals can step into the role of advisor finally, guiding leaderships with insights to shape smarter business decisions. In other words, payroll isn't going to become less important with AI, it's going to become more strategic. So instead of worrying about whether or not AI will replace payroll jobs, let's embrace what's happening. AI is replacing the parts of payroll nobody signed up for. What stays and what will increase is the human side of payroll. Empathy, judgment, communication, and trust. Payroll isn't going away anytime soon. It's moving up the value chain. Then there's the conversation about skills. Which ones are rising in value and which ones will quietly die off? I think right now, today, that's the way to think about it, and less about job titles. The skills required will be hybrid. Think the strategist, think the storytelling tech. Compliance and strategy will always rank high when it comes to payroll, and rightly so. So we need to look at people to work on global compliance and statutory risk. And don't forget the nuts and bolts, integrations and the vendor ecosystem. Architecture will become even more important than it is now, so you'll see a need for solution skills and the ability to manage external people and partners. Then there's data, who in payroll doesn't love numbers. Data isn't about reporting it anymore, it's about interpreting it, spotting trends and turning them into insights. So I see more of a need for payroll intelligence and payroll BI emerging. What I guess I'm trying to say is this. The bottom line is AI won't make the talented and adaptable redundant. It will make you indispensable. The function itself, what's going to happen there? I see a business case for payroll intelligence hubs over shared services perhaps. Zero-touch payroll will become the norm, self-validating workflows, auto-reconciliation with flags for humans where needed. The payroll calendar will become a monitoring exercise. Governance is going to grow teeth. Dedicated payroll ethics professionals, greater transparency, improvement to employee-facing paybots. AI will make more decisions whilst humans own the frameworks guiding fairness, bias, and accountability. In essence, payroll will be lean and data-led. It will be proactive and not reactive. It will be embedded in strategy. It will still be human at the core, even when AI does the work. The last thing I want to say, until the next time I'm asked, is this. The next time you hear AI is taking payroll jobs, push back. AI isn't taking payroll jobs, it's taking on payroll pain. And that's exactly what we've been waiting for. The future of payroll is human, powered by AI.
I'm Karen Thompson from Armstrong Watson, and today I'm going to be talking about the impacts of mergers and acquisitions from personal experience as an accountancy firm, payroll bureau. So when we're looking at an acquisition in particular, there's three key considerations, and the first one is your timeline. Now, I'm in a very, very fortunate position where I'm advised fairly early on when the business is considering looking at an acquisition. But as we all know, until that wet signature is there, the acquisition doesn't happen. So it's always on that proviso, if, when, but. We don't always get the information that we need as far as payroll numbers. Do they have a payroll department? And so forth. Do they provide? How many clients do they have? How many pay slips are they processing? But the important part is just to make sure that as soon as you are able to be involved in that process, that you get yourself around that table and are involved, because you will need to start planning how the integration with the teams and systems and workflows and so forth can happen. Which leads me nicely on to the next point, which is systems, processes, and what have you. Now, here at Armstrong Watson, we have our way of doing things. We have our software, we have our processes. Being an accountancy firm, we have money laundering and all sorts of things that we have to go through that aren't traditionally payroll. But these all have to be put in place. Now, we could be of the attitude of what we do is absolutely right, and therefore everybody complies with the Armstrong Watson way, but it doesn't work like that, or it shouldn't work like that. What's important is that you take time to understand the systems and the processes that are in place within, in this case, the payroll team that you have acquired. And, bearing in mind, there's no normal hurry for this, because that payroll team has been functioning perfectly fine without you until this point. Now, the only time which we have had this situation is, for example, if the payroll software is up for renewal and, or for example, it's going obsolete. So that might push your timeline to look at the payroll systems and software that the payroll team are using from the acquisition. But otherwise, for the most part, you'll be able to take your time in looking, because they may have processes in place that you think, wow, that's a really good way of doing it. So don't assume that the way in which you operate is necessarily better, or indeed, as I've found, actually a combination of the two. So you do a bit of mixing and matching, and that can be, really, really positive. So when you're looking at software, you're looking at processes, they may have a piece of software that does workflows, for example, that you don't have. Could you incorporate that? So I think don't assume that your way is right would be my biggest part of advice here. And then finally, and most importantly, are the people. Now, I can speak from experience, and with a team of, now 40 strong. Each time you do an acquisition, your payroll team that provides the services to clients, because don't forget clients are important as well here. It could be a change of system, change of way of working, so they do have to be taken into account. But when you're looking at the people, so these are the payroll professionals that are now going to be part of your team, and you need to look at integrating. So yes, there are challenges for the existing team, but nowhere near the challenges for those individuals that effectively are being tupied most often into the new firm, in this case Armstrong Watson. Remember, most people work for an organisation because they choose to. And all of a sudden, they're now going to be working for another organisation they didn't choose. Now, I would hope, and fortunately here at Armstrong Watson, we do experience this, where the firm looks for acquisition for those firms with similar cultures and values. So it shouldn't be such a huge transition, but you do have to bear in mind those people. All of a sudden, there may be a different way of working. We have a clear desk policy, for example. It could be that they have drawers and paperwork, and all of a sudden that might have to start to change. When you're looking at terms and conditions, do they have a Friday afternoon off and the rest of the firm doesn't? How do you integrate that team? But the main thing, again, my advice is a bit like the systems and processes. Don't rush it. Let people get to know you. You get to know them. Introduce them to the wider team. Start involving them in training programs or knowledge sharing. Are they members of the institute? So just bear in mind, these are people. And remember, they are people that you need to work with.
Hi, I'm Jared from Payslip, and today I want to take a few moments to talk about AI in global payroll, looking at, yes, the possible potential transformative impact, but also the ethical considerations for you to keep in mind when you're evaluating a tech vendor's AI offering. Let's begin with some of the potential advantages. So where can AI have that transformative impact on payroll? Well, firstly, it's in areas like self-service and support, where employees are getting instant access and answers to pay-run queries, which, as we all know, can take up quite a lot of time during the pay cycle. Forecasting, where you're using historic data to predict labour costs and spot likely risks before they happen. Anomaly detection, so catching duplicate payments or missing deductions or suspicious overtime before the pay run closes. Process optimization, automating things like reconciliations or checks, making the payroll cycle faster and less manual. And then continuous compliance. So of particular note in a global context, maintaining real-time compliance with changes in international regulations across all of your entities. But what about the ethical considerations for the vendor themselves? So here are 4 areas that we would advise you to interrogate with any vendor that's introducing AI. Bias. Has the AI been trained on historic payroll or HR data that could reflect inequalities? And this is really important because already in the market, we have seen high-profile instances of tech companies rolling out AI applications that contained and reflected inherent biases. And that has led to legal proceedings. 2, transparency. Can you audit and explain every decision that the AI makes or suggestions that it recommends? If not, it's what's called a black box. And this is something that's being codified into international law, particularly for the benefit of the employee. If I am subject to a HR decision that was recommended by AI, you need to be able to explain how it arrived at that decision and unpack the logic behind it. 3, accountability. If the AI were, for example, to misapply a tax rule, who's responsible? Is it you, the company, or the vendor? And this is not always straightforward, so it's important that you interrogate the possible grey areas and have it clarified in the contract and the SLAs. And lastly, privacy. Payroll data is amongst the most sensitive in any business, so it needs to be properly safeguarded against data breaches. Again, interrogate thoroughly the security parameters that are in place for any vendor. Some of the things then that we would consider when we're building an AI feature, what we would call the success criteria. Really important to ask these questions of the vendor. 1, are they beginning with a clear identification of a problem? In other words, what is the AI actually solving? If it's not solving a particular pain point, then chances are it's just AI for the sake of AI, and that's not what we want to be introducing into payroll. 2, does it use clean, high-quality data, and how has it accumulated that data? 3, does it deliver accuracy at all points? So things like Claude or ChatGPT, those large language models aren't really suitable for use in payroll because they're, I suppose, subject to hallucinations or mistakes. What we want to focus on is narrow, clearly defined AI use cases for specific purposes. Does it scale across all countries? Yes, it's been tested with 100 employees. Fine. What about 500, 1,000, 10,000 and so on? Can it cope with the scale of your company? And lastly, where do payroll teams feature in the feedback loop? Is there that continuous dialogue? Then 3 core questions to ask. Do you have control over switching the AI features on or off? Is the data minimized and protected? Are there guardrails in place so that the AI is only possible to be used for the intended application? If not, it's subject to misuse and potential risks. So here are 4 reasons why we believe Payslip is ideally suited for ongoing AI success. 1, we always begin from a place of high quality, structured data, and that is what we have built over the past 10 years. 2, Clear use cases. We never introduce AI for AI's sake. 3, we always include a payroll practitioner in that feedback loop. So there's a dialogue between you, the team that's using the AI features, and the people that are building it and maintaining it. And lastly, privacy and compliance as a non-negotiable, as the bedrock of everything we do. That's been built into the platform from day one and not just hacked on in recent years. So there you have it. Hopefully a helpful overview of AI and some of the things to keep in mind when you're evaluating the vendors that are out there. If you have any further questions, get in touch at payslip.com.
Too often, payroll is brought in too late. After contracts are signed, timelines are fixed, expectations are already set. By then, payroll teams are racing to catch up. I've seen it firsthand. Clients who didn't involve payroll early, their data was incomplete, their processes undocumented, their deadlines impossible to meet. But compare that to clients who brought us in from the very first conversation. They had time to clean their data, they aligned their teams, and their first payslip, it ran without a single issue. From that first conversation, there are 3 areas that make the difference between a smooth go live and a painful one. Number 1, readiness of the team. Are the right people and resources in place? Payroll isn't just about systems, it's about people knowing their roles. Number 2, data quality. If the data isn't clean and structured, delays are inevitable. When we raise this early, clients can fix it before implementation begins. Number 3, process mapping. Every organisation runs payroll differently. By documenting processes early, we design future workflows that are efficient. When these 3 areas are addressed up front, go lives aren't just on time, they are smooth. And payroll teams feel confident and in control instead of feeling overwhelmed. The journey from first conversation to first payslip is about more than just a project. It's about building trust, it's about creating stability, and about setting payroll teams up for long-term success. Global payroll is complex. Different countries, different rules, different expectations. But when you start it right with planning, clean data, and aligned processes, you build a foundation that works month after month, year after year. So here's the takeaway. If you want global payroll success, don't wait until implementation. Bring payroll in at the very first conversation. It's the best investment you can make in ensuring every project delivers, not just the first payslip, but every payslip after.
Hello there. Today I'm going to give you a quick talk in BCP, or Business Continuity Planning, but specifically for payroll. So I speak to a lot of organizations who have BCP plans in place, especially after COVID. But a lot of them are very vague in terms of, if there's a natural disaster, we'll send everyone to work from home, or we'll change the server location. And not many that I've seen go that much into depth in terms of payroll. So what I've been trying to work with organizations on is creating BCPs specifically for payroll, or business continuity payroll. This means that if there's an emergency or a resource challenge within your payroll department specifically, you still have a mechanism to pay your employees, and you're not scrambling around at the last minute trying to work out how the payroll system works. So how does it work, and what's the best way to go about it? First of all, just to give you some examples, I kind of split this into 3 areas. Number 1 is resourcing. So you can have resourcing challenges if your payroll manager leaves or is unavailable for any reason. They could have won the lottery, or they could have been injured in a remote location, any reason. Resourcing challenges is always a major problem or a major issue within payroll, because it is such a specific skill. Systems, you could have your payroll system go down. You could have third parties not working. So if you use a banking platform, it might be unavailable, or if you use a time and attendance system that can't log your hours or anything like that, third parties unavailable, can cause obviously huge problems when it comes to running your payroll end of the month. Or lastly, legislation. So you could have a last minute legislation challenge You might not be meeting national minimum wage, for example, or the government could put in a last minute change to what you're doing. You might have a contractual dispute with your payroll provider. There could be any number of reasons why there could be any kind of legislation or even a cyber attack or something like that. So these are the three areas what I put into forming the most challenges with regards to creating a BCP. So how do you create your BCP? First of all, you identify the critical operations. That means understanding your payroll end to end. So the best way to do this, and it's quite an old school way, is to get sticky notes out and start putting them on the wall and create a chart to show every single thing your team does in a month, in a payroll month. So then you'd understand every part of the payroll process from start to finish. And what you can start to do then is to start planning what happens and what you're going to do if you take away one of those sticky notes. What happens if, for instance, when the bank file gets uploaded, what happens if you can't create a bank file? What do you do then? What do you do if the timesheets can't be uploaded into the payroll system? It's important to fully understand your payroll process in order to plan against threats to it. So this goes with assessing the major risks that you have, and then planning backup for that. So the backup will be what I like to call counter threats. So counter mechanisms to ensure that whatever happens, you've still got an area there. So you could have a vulnerable point where only you are able to do one specific thing. So in that case, a countermeasure could be you training someone else to do this. It could be that you only have one person in your team who has skills within the payroll system. So one possible countermeasure for that is using a third party who are able to log in and run the payroll for you. I know that there are several organizations that can help with this, including my own. So feel free to ask further about that. But it's about putting countermeasures in for any of the risky areas that you see within the payroll process. If you do use a third party to give you a hand with the emergency coverage, make sure you look for references, certifications, the skills and the existence experience, and to make sure that you have regular touch points with them to make sure that that third party fully understands your payroll system, your processes, and that you know exactly what they're going to do if they need to jump in at any point. And that concludes what I wanted to talk about with BCPs. So feel free to get in touch. Quite often, I do get a lot of people coming to me, oh, we're panicking at the last minute that their payroll system's not working or their payroll people are not available. So having this is going to make having a BCP, a backup plan in place, is going to make your lives much easier, and it's going to ensure that everyone gets paid no matter what happens. So thank you very much.
In order to achieve a truly global framework within payroll, you need governance, structure and standardisation. These will all drive efficiency. But remember that there's untapped efficiencies within every business. So how do we find these? Well, we start with your North Star, so your strategy. Where do you want to be and why? And do you have a vision and a mission? And these are important because these help people who don't understand payroll understand your direction, where you're going, why you're doing it, what you're going after. Before you embark on this, most people know where they want to be. Most businesses know, okay, this is where we want to be, this is what we want to do. They just don't know how to get there. So in order to get there, it's like a map. You build a map. And in order to do and build the map, you need to understand what you've got. You cannot be effective at managing your global payroll function if you don't know what there is to understand. So where do you start? You start with a discovery, a health check, an as is. due diligence, you can call it any of those things, but you want to probably plot it out around what I refer to as strategic pillars. So number 1, technology and integrations. Number 2 is your business processes. Number 3 is your people. Number 4 is your data. Number 5 is your controls. And number 6 is your service. And of course, underpinning all of this is your metrics, your communication, your stakeholder management. So make sure that you're mapping all of your technology, all of your integrations, not just your payroll system, every system that interacts with payroll. Do you have benefits? Do you have a HCM? Do you have a commission system? Map all of it. Payroll is no more, especially within global payroll, it's no more about just a payroll system. It's about all of the different technological landscape and solution architecture that comes with that. And of course, that also hand in hand comes in with data as well. So data, the majority of probably your payroll process comes from that input, that 50%. If you map down where that data comes from, who it comes from, who approves it, what format it comes in, you're quite quickly going to build quite a nice picture of all of the different types of data that you've got. You can also have a look at RPA, so robotic process automation, to support and really drive some efficiencies if that's something that a business will work with you on as well. Your people, your biggest asset. Of course, it's all about knowledge within payroll still. People want to enjoy what they do. When we have people within the team, it's all very well knowing their roles and responsibilities. What's their utilisation? So to get to utilisation, how long does a payroll take to run, to process? How long do their jobs, their tasks take them? It's really important to understand that, because what you need is flex. You need flex within your people. You need to give people time to be able to be creative, to come up with solutions, to drive efficiencies. The leaner that a model works on, whilst important, it's going to break at some point if it's too perfect, if it doesn't have any of the flex there for you. So really consider that, because payroll is used to running on those very lean models, but what happens when something breaks or you don't have a backup? It's really important. Your metrics are very, very important. They're going to really help govern the global payroll arena. So you'll hear about SLAs, they're your external benchmark. Of course, you've got OLAs, your operational level agreements. So what these are is a rule book internally. These really, really support you as a function. These make sure that you remain compliant, that there's discipline, that there's no blame game, quite importantly as well. And they make sure that you receive what you need by when you need it. So it no longer turns into payroll being expected to work with the business, but the business being expected to work with payroll. So once you've understood all of this, you've mapped all of it, just create something really simple for the strategic pillars and define the criteria that you want in there. So what do you expect technology and integrations to be? What do you expect your business process, your people, etc., etc.? And then rag it. So I mean a red, an amber and a green. And then what you can do is you take all of that data, you can turn it into insights for your leadership team. That creates transparency. Transparency creates trust and therefore relationships. That gets you the seat at the table and the roadmap to get exactly what you need.
As Policy and Research Officer, it's incredibly important for me to keep abreast of what's going on with new and upcoming legislation. So for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to try and briefly explain what happens from a government conceiving an idea to it becoming legislation that you have to comply with. So first off, government ideas or ideas of prospective governments usually start off within their manifesto. This is where they pledge a certain thing, they will give an example of how their idea will work in practice, or the ideals of what they want to happen. So with the example of the most recent Labour Party, they were very clear in their manifesto about strengthening employment rights and strengthening things like statutory sick pay. And we're starting to see that come through the legislative system. Now, once a government wants to enact those ideas, how do they present those to government to become law? Well, there's two different things that need to be considered. There is primary and secondary legislation. Primary legislation is a large, overarching legislation that dictates how something should work, and the secondary legislation is more the details of how it will work and how it should be applied. So to give you an example, the Employment Rights Bill is a piece of primary legislation. It's huge, it contains a lot of things in there and doesn't really dive into the nitty-gritty of a lot of those things. So, for example, the statutory sick pay changes will require secondary legislation in order to amend the details of how those things will work. But before these two stages, there's a very key part that happens with a lot of legislation, not all legislation, but that is the consultations and calls for evidence. A call for evidence is a document or a policy paper where the government wants evidence on how things work in practice. They're not necessarily looking for opinions, they're looking for evidence, real tangible proof of how things work in practice or what impacts certain policies have on different groups. A consultation, in a similar way, is the government asking for information, but here they're more asking for opinion on a prospective change. Sometimes that will include draft legislation to look over, as we're seeing currently with the modernising and mandating tax advisors registration with HMRC. That is a consultation where written evidence is going to be required on draft legislation that they hope to enact. This is incredibly important for you because this is your best opportunity to get your voice heard with government and change legislation before it becomes law that you have to comply with. The CIPP are very involved in these processes, so you can always speak to us to have your voice heard through us. We represent not just our members but the entire payroll industry. Once the government has considered these consultations and calls for evidence, they can draw up their legislation, and then it gets presented to the Houses of Commons and the House of Lords. Some legislation starts in the Lords, some starts in the Commons. Then there is opportunities for both houses to discuss, debate, and put forward amendments to those bills. You might have seen with the Employment Rights Bill currently, there are hundreds of different amendments being proposed for that piece of legislation. Then, once the amendments have been put forward, there will be a sort of backwards and forwards between the Lords and Commons to decide what should be taken forward into the actual law. And to try and stay clear of politics too much, we are in a position now where we will start to see the Employment Rights Bill back in front of the Commons to look at those amendments. It is unlikely that a lot of those amendments will make it through, especially if they have an impact to the Treasury or are not aligned with what the Labour Party originally wanted, because the Labour Party has such a strong majority within the Commons. Once it has gone through the House of Commons and the House of Lords, it will achieve royal assent, where it then becomes law. Some laws might need the Secretary of State to approve them, but at this point, that's when you need to comply with those new rules. Hope that's been helpful. Thank you.
This is an overview on strategic initiatives that shape how payroll operations across global functions ensure alignment with business goals and compliance standards. Payroll is now a strategic value enabler in the modern world. With modern payroll evolving from transaction functions to a strategic business-driven area, organisations are recognising payroll has potential to develop in many ways where it didn't used to before in the current climate. One of this is unlocking workforce insights for better decision makings, having the right service delivery managers, operations teams, strategic planners all working together hand in hand to deliver the business goal what our global business needs. This leads on to supporting global expansion. In the modern corporate world, there's a lot of scalable items going on. This is from standardizing data lakes to all your data source in one spot, but also making sure that your system is compliant and working. This will lead to enhanced employee experiences through transparency and flexibility. Some of the key things for strategic incentive for shaping how payroll worked is modernizing your infrastructure, looking instead of having 1, 2, 3 different sort of data processors, inputs, outputs, or even your global vendor, to standardize this to one vendor as input, output, and your actual processing in one set area. This works from a global idea, is you're getting a global standardization across all your markets with in play. This can also be done on a data cloud based point of view or through APIs. So you're working with automation. So you're cutting out the manual work that your process have to chug each month, going in each month. And AI is a big thing in the current world. How can you leverage AI in payroll? Can you get this to do some of your validation checks? Can you have it take some of the back office work off your hands? What you don't need to be chugging through from your specialists each month. And another way from a key incentive is the minute with businesses is leveraging payroll data. Having predictive analytics and strategic planning is important for business on how to adopt your framework, what works best for your business from a managerial point of view and from a specialist point of view, to address your talent on how we can best optimize workloads within the current climate, and like we said, with the use of AI, but making sure that compliance is still important. Building a global policy is important for business. This is, in my point, the 6 main things are a unified platform, like I said, country engineer based, where you have everything in one. Phased implementation for accuracy, stakeholder and alignment. This will ensure that not going live everything at once, that you have lessons learned, so each time things are getting better and improving. This will lead to integrated workflow, what will reduce the manual errors, because you've got a lot of APIs, automation, connection from your input to your output, so it's not as hands-on for your specialists. An employee-centric design for transparency and trust. One of the most important things in having a business is having your employees trust your payroll staff, because when people start to get paid wrong, questions get asked, the business can be affected with people wanting to leave the business saying that the people aren't paying them correctly. That is always important to payroll, is a main function for business, to making sure employees are paid and employees are happy when they get paid. It's the biggest thing what comes to mind. Resilience planning is always important, making sure you have a roadmap for, let's say, 2025. You're working on Q3 now, Q4, but you're also looking ahead for 2026. What's going to happen in Q1, Q2, Q3? Working on your budgets, looking from a business point of view, right, this is the business goal. We want to focus on 1, 2, 3 areas. You know this is what needs to improve, and aligning with payroll with the business goal functions. So I'm going to use 2 examples here. Is centralizing data. This is big for businesses to have a better governance and decision making, and automating processes, what can reduce costs and improve accuracy. The other thing is, with all this, to make sure that everything is globally compliant. This is working with partners who you know can manage your local regulations, ensuring that everything's compliant, that when it comes to audit, that there's a clear overview in place. And with this, having one vendor potentially is centralizing your systems and reducing fragmentation of oversights, what can happen from vendor to vendor, to ensure that everything is working well from a strategic point of view. Lastly, in the last 20 seconds, is making sure that your technology is driven for transformation. Technology is soon going to be the heart of payroll, and working it with enhancing everything one step at a time.
And that brings us to the end of today's Payroll Power Hour. We'd like to thank all of our speakers for their contributions, and of course you for being part of this session. JGA are the world's leading payroll recruitment partner. We're committed to supporting payroll professionals, not just during National Payroll Week, but every day of the year. If you'd like to continue the conversation and hear how having the best payroll professionals can help to shape your business, connect with us all at JGA. Enjoy the rest of National Payroll Week, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.
Through the jargon, no room for mistake. Keeping businesses thriving, compliant and safe. Forecasting strategy, it's all on our mind. It's time payroll took its place in the boardroom to shine. They think there's a button, how little they know the global complexities behind every payroll. We drive the economy, power and trade. Without us in place, no one gets paid.